Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name's Kevin. This is the In My Head podcast. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. If you're just listening to this, you may or may not know, but we have a YouTube channel now. If you just go to YouTube and search In My Head podcast, we've posted a couple episodes there, and I want to do it more. I've had people tell me that they prefer watching it over just listening to it. So this episode, obviously, we filmed as well and put it on our YouTube channel, and I'll try to do that with as many as I can, as many as people feel comfortable doing it. If they give permission for us to film it, I definitely will. As much as that makes me uncomfortable, I don't really like having myself on camera, but it's all good. And so if people prefer watching it, we'll do that. So one thing I wanted to bring up before I jump into this episode is our last episode was with Kat Rivas, and she is a police officer and works in the jail system in Arizona. And she just shot me a text this morning. It was really heartbreaking. We did an episode last week with her all about mental health with law enforcement, not just law enforcement, but military, firefighters, emergency responders, nurses, all these different professions that carry this high level of stress and anxiety with it. And there's this rise in suicidality. And she shot me a text this morning. I had a great episode. I had a great time talking with her. And I got a text. I woke up to a text from her saying that, I believe it was yesterday. Let me look real quick. Either yesterday or, yesterday. She said, her text said, lost one of my own to suicide yesterday on duty in my own unit. Please don't stop doing what you're doing. It is so important. And that just broke my heart that I got that text from her. And it's a problem that we kind of need to shed more light on, of the, we ourselves deal with it in our own lives, in our own jobs that are stressful, our family life, or whatever it may be. And I love that people like Kat Rivas are shining light on these professions that carry this heavy weight of stress and anxiety in their service careers that they're doing to protect all of us. And I've always had respect for these people in these professions. It's just amped up my appreciation for what they do. And so grateful for the time, the sacrifice from their own families, and obviously from sacrifice that it puts on their mental health a lot of the times. And so Kat has started this program called Protected, which is becoming a nonprofit. And we talked all about this in our last episode, but I just wanted to bring that up. I got that text from her this morning, and it's a real problem. And I felt for her. I felt so bad for her and for the family of this person that took their life. And so we've talked about this many times on the podcast, but no matter how far down you get down this dark road, these feelings of anxiety, depression, we can never believe the lie that our brain tells us that our loved ones will be better off without us. And a lot of people who don't have that depression, anxiety, don't understand what it's like to get to that point. And it's a lot of times it is people believing that, oh, my loved ones will be better off without me. And a lot of time they believe, like in the episode we'll talk about today with Krystal Chong, a lot of these people get to this point where it's not as much that they want to die as much as they want to end their pain. And that seems like the solution for them. And so more than anything, I'm hoping this podcast, as many of the other great resources are that there are out there, I'm just hoping people will realize that is not the answer. That so many people that have gotten to that point, Krystal Chong that we're with today is a perfect example of this, where she got to that point of feeling like suicide was the only answer. And the fact that she didn't do that, that was a turning point in her life, and she changed. And to see the amazing things that have happened in her life after making that conscious decision not to take her life, and she's turned it into something really good. If you get to that point, you got to realize that it's a life and literally a life and death situation, a decision that you can make, that so many good things are going to come after that. If you stick it out, if you seek the help, if you reach out to somebody you trust, whether it's therapy, a close friend, a family member, if you can just hang on and find that help you need, there's so many good things that are waiting for you just on the other side of this. And whether you believe it or not, it's making you into this much more well-rounded person that feels a lot, that cares a lot. And Krystal Chong talks about that in this episode, is often people with anxiety, with depression, are people that just feel very deeply and really attach meaning to emotions, and sometimes it's the wrong meaning that we're making. Anyway, I'll let Krystal talk about all that. But with this episode, well, before I get into this explanation, I just want to say, again, plug for our YouTube channel. Check it out, subscribe to it. If you're listening to this on any other platform, podcast, give us a 5-star rating, a review if you have time, if you're enjoying it. I would really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the kind words we've gotten for our podcast. And like I've said in the beginning, this is very unnatural for me, but I've had great experiences talking with people, and I'm hoping that it's helped someone out there. And if you know someone that it would help, please share this with them. So today's episode with Krystal Chong, you can find her on Instagram, just Krystal Chong, KrystalChong. Krystal Chong. Had a great time talking with her. She's a holistic anxiety specialist. And this is one of those episodes that we talked about a lot of different things in about 45 minutes. So no matter what, you'll find something for you or for someone you care about in this episode. In the beginning, she starts off right when we were starting. She's like, "Do you care if we start this episode off with a meditation?" Which I love meditation. I'm all about. So that we started it right off with that, setting your intention on what you're hoping to get out of this. And I love that, not just about Krystal, but about a lot of these people I've talked to. This is kind of a practice for them of setting their intention. And I recently just went to yoga, and it was really rad how noticing that trend in a lot of these different practices is setting some type of intention of what you want. You want more acceptance in your life, more love. You want to be less judgmental, less envious of other people, or you just want to find more meaning, satisfaction in your life. All these things start with setting that intention, and then throughout these practices, keeping that intention, that mantra, the center of your focus. So Krystal's such a rad person. She's Jamaican. She's lived in Canada. She lives in New York now. And I don't know if it's just because she told me that, but I felt like the more I talked to her, I could pick out all these different parts of her that's made her the person she is. And it's so rad. I had a great time talking with her. So she is one of these people, and she gets all into her story. So stick out this entire episode because we cover so much. In the beginning, she goes through her experience with being 14, going to the doctor, being diagnosed with generalized anxiety. They said between a 1 and a 10, she was at a 9. And with medication and luck, she would get down to a 7 and probably have that for the rest of her life. So she goes into getting to a point into her 20s where she was just tolerating this pain. It wasn't getting better. So the medication was helping her tolerate it. And she got to this breaking point of the only answer is ending my life. And she said that was where she did a 180 and decided she was going to research, do everything in her power to change this around. And she's obviously done it. And she's created something very powerful out of this pain and suffering and created new meaning in it. She ended up writing a book called What the Hell Am I Supposed to Do with My Life? Which the more I talk to her, this is such a fitting title for her, and her figuring that out, providing tools for people. Not only that, but she started this new program, and we talk about this towards the end of the episode. This new program, it's like an 8-phase or 8-part program. And all this information is on her Instagram. So you can check her out again, Krystal Chong on Instagram. And she even has tons of free links. Her Instagram is great. She posts like anti-anxiety foods that are just going to help your gut health. As we know, serotonin produced in the gut. So healthier gut, healthier levels of serotonin gives you that overall better feeling. If you're eating garbage in, garbage out, this is the main center where our body is making this serotonin. So she talks about that, healthy foods, healthy lifestyle. But what really I connected with was this healthy mindset, this healthy way of thinking, getting rid of negative thoughts of yourself, because that was my trap when I was stuck in this anxiety, depression, and I've come out of it. I've gone back into it many times throughout the times that I've suffered with this. And a lot of it stems from that negative way of thinking. And I asked her, if you're stuck in this rut, how do you get out of that? And she said, whatever we tell ourselves about ourselves becomes our truth and becomes our meaning. So if we are constantly beating ourselves down, talking negatively about ourselves, that becomes our reality, and that becomes our truth, what we believe about ourselves. And then everything in our surroundings starts to become that. So she's like, we have to somehow get into this shift where instead of day to day, we're looking at all the things we don't have and all the bad things that are happening to us, instead shifting that to the good things we have in our life, and the good things that are happening, even on our worst days, finding those things and knowing that tomorrow's a new day, you know, and living in the moment, all about centering yourself in the moment, accepting it. And she talks about so many great things. So stick out this episode because we covered so much. And she's just a fun person to be around and talk to. And I'm really stoked on what she's doing. She's writing another book right now, and she talks about that. So hopefully you enjoy this as much as I did. For me, in my kind of journey through mental health, it's funny, as we've done these episodes, I realize more and more that I haven't talked a lot about my own experience with mental illness, and I kind of just do it through my guests. So we talk about it here and there, but I will have some episodes coming up with my history through this whole journey, and even recently how I slipped back into those feelings of anxiety, depression, and what I did to mitigate it, to flip it around again, and how when you feel you're out of it, finally, how you can have those moments of slipping back into it. And it's so easy just to be like, oh, great, I'm back here. It's going to last forever. It's never going to go away. And it was such an eye-opener for me of how to stay on top of this healthy mindset, healthy living, and that there is a way out of it, and how much better I started feeling. But it's just a continuous effort. And that as you sometimes can slip out of unhealthy ways of thinking, unhealthy lifestyles, that anxiety, depression can creep right back in and feel like it starts all over again. But Krystal talks about that. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Again, subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a rating, whatever, if you're enjoying this. But more important than anything is to share it with somebody you think it will help. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Krystal, and I hope you enjoy this episode. So please welcome Krystal Chong.
In My Head is a free-form discussion podcast where we talk about issues of mental and physical health and well-being. This is not meant to be a diagnosis or treatment plan, but rather a place to share real stories and insights from professionals and people who have or are battling mental illness. We hope to create a community where people feel comfortable and happy with who they are. Hopefully this is helpful for you, and please share it with others. Thanks for listening.
3, 2, 1. All right, I'm here with Krystal Chong. Thank you so much, Krystal, coming live from New York. Thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. And we wanted to start this off doing a little meditation. So I want to turn that over to you. I want you to lead that for us, and let's jump right in.
Okay, good. I just like to start the conversation with a meditation just to get us grounded and ready to receive the information. And it's really good to get out of your head, which is perfect for In Your Head podcast. So
Perfect.
All right, let's get started. So wherever you are, just get into a comfortable position, a seated position, or whatever position feels good for you. And when you're ready, just slowly allow your eyes to close. And just slowly begin to deepen your breath. Big, big inhale. Big, big exhale. Now, as you deepen your breath, just see what your body is calling for. See what your body is asking you to do. Do you feel to roll your neck out? Do you feel to stretch? Do you feel to relax your shoulders? Whatever your body is calling for, just take a moment to give it that. And as you inhale, just notice that air going into your lungs. And as you exhale, Just release anything that you're carrying. And just continue to breathe in this way. Notice any sensations that you might feel. Maybe you feel the air around your skin. Maybe as you exhale through your nose, you feel the air against your top lip. Don't think too much about it. Just notice it and just watch whatever you're feeling. And as you're breathing, just begin to relax the muscles around your eyes. Begin to relax your cheeks, your jaw, your tongue, your shoulders. And just do whatever feels great for your body right now. And then we're just going to take one more big, deep inhale, feeding yourself with air. Feeling nurturing your body, and a really big exhale. Sending love out to the world. And then when you're ready, just prepare to come back. And gently start to open your eyes. Reading the first thing you see with love. That's you, Kevin.
Thank you so much for starting with that. I appreciate that.
Wonderful.
It's crazy how meditation has become such an important practice to me over the years, and especially this last year as I've done the podcast. It's huge, and it's been a huge part for me in the journey through anxiety, depression, and so I appreciate you starting that. I kind of feel like we should do that every time, just get people in the zone, ready to go. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I mean, there's so many different reasons why meditation is so effective, and there's so many different things that I share about a holistic approach to anxiety, which I know we're going to get into. But when people ask me, like, if there's one thing that they can start with, I always just say meditation.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and I know we've talked about this, is that if you have an active mind, medication can be difficult for you to just sit in silence, right?
Right.
Why like guided meditations are really helpful for people who are just beginning to get into meditation and have an active mind and have some resistance towards it. But I'm just going to do that for now. We can talk more about meditation later.
No, and I agree. And it's funny how many people I've heard say, like, I'm terrible at meditation. They've just done it a few times and they think they're terrible because their mind wanders,
It goes insane, snowballs, and you come out and you're like, holy fucking shit, that was horrible. I'm never doing that again.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I remember as I started down the anxiety, depression about 10 years ago, I remember going to a therapy session and she wanted to do mindfulness with me. And I remember for me, it was just super emotional because for me, when I had extreme anxiety, I refused to have my environment quiet. I always was filling it with noise, like music, shows, or anything to distract myself. And so when I had that moment of total silence, it was kind of overwhelming, but I remember her kind of guiding through it and be like, hey, take those, and she kind of, I don't know, by the end I was like, this is awesome. So I back it big time. I like it.
Yeah. But I just think it's so important for people who are talking about meditation to, especially if you're talking to someone who has an active mind, i.e. can manifest as anxiety, like to offer them options that for meditation that are suitable for them, as well as seeing exactly what's happening during the process of meditation from like a scientific standpoint, because I feel like if you have anxiety, which means you have an active mind, you want to understand what you're doing. And the more you understand what you're doing is the more it's going to work for you and the more you're going to be motivated to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. I want to start, well, we've started, but I want to get into how you started down this road of holistic anxiety specialist. I love that term. And I'm curious how you got to this point.
All right. Well, let me see how I can summarize that story. So when I was 14, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. Well, you know the story, Kevin, but just for viewers, like doctors said that.
Yeah, I want everyone to hear this. I came across your Instagram post and it was so touching to me, and it was so powerful. And so I love that you were in that point and where you are now. So that's the story I would love our audience to hear. So yeah.
So yeah, when I was 14, my parents took me to doctors because clearly there was stuff going on. And the doctor said that you have generalized anxiety disorder and chronic depression. And he said that without a doubt, you need to be medicated. And with medication and lifestyle changes, and he said on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 9. And with medication and lifestyle changes, the best you can expect to be was a 7. And that was pretty depressing to hear when you were 14, that like the struggle that you were having was basically always going to be there. And the things that people can offer you, like, wasn't really going to do much. And like I went through this journey of, I'm just the kind of person that if you tell me something and I don't want it to be true, I'm like, well, I just don't believe that. I get it. Like, I'm from Jamaica. Doctors in Jamaica told me that. I went to school in Canada. Doctors in Canada told me that. I live in New York. Doctors in New York told me that. So this wasn't like a one doctor type of thing. And I was like, I'm just going to find a way out of that, I was pretty determined, but there wasn't very much information at that time. That was 20 years ago. And I just tried to power through the best I could. And as I got older, anxiety gets worse if you don't know how to treat it, right? Because you're continuing the same habits that snowball and that create more of the issue. And when I was 26, I was at a point in my career where I was doing really well. And I just felt like I was doing everything that life told me I needed to do to be happy. And, I got a good education, I got a good job, you had some success, and I just felt really empty. And I knew that more of that stuff, more money, more success, more like recognition was never going to fill that void I had and was never going to make me feel happy. And I didn't know what would. And that really exacerbated my issues with anxiety and depression. And it just got really bad to the point where my mind just became like a torture chamber. Like it was just nonstop, like abusive thoughts, like 24/7. And it just became really difficult to live in my body and my mind with that constantly. And I remember that the turning point for me was when it got so bad that I felt like killing myself was the only logical solution to escaping what I was experiencing. And I knew that when I had that thought, like I was just desperate to change. And also that I had nothing to lose at that point. Do you know what I mean? Because I really felt like I didn't want to live like this. So what else, what could happen, And so I just became determined to find another way. Like the way the world works and the way the universe works is when you set an intention and you really feel strongly connected to it, the universe aligns. And it led me on this insane journey where I was working with my family, I resigned from our company, and I moved to New York City on an eat, pray, love type of journey. And, that journey really connected me to meaningful work. And that and a lot of the things I learned in my journey healed a lot of my issues with anxiety and depression. And then I wrote a book about it called What the Hell Am I Supposed to Do with My Life?
I love that.
A funny-friendly guide to finding your magic, your purpose, and yourself. And I remember the day before the book was going to be published, I was like, I can't publish this. I was like, if I do this, I'm going to be completely naked. Like my friends, my parents, there's so many people who didn't know all these things about me. Like it's embarrassing to be like, for people to know that you have like mental illness or that you're on medication. And I was just like, you know what? Like if one person who felt the way that I did changes their lives and finds a fulfilling, happy life because of this book, then it would be worth it. And so I did. And I was just really blown away by the response after the book. Just like hundreds and hundreds of people wrote me from all over the world, just saying, like how the book made them feel unalone, and it really empowered them, and it gave them a sense of hope. And they just continue to write me all the time, telling me about the amazing things happening in their life. And these are people who are like legit suicidal, like all spectrums of people, from people who are suicidal, for people who were just having this amazing life but it just felt empty, to people who just felt something was wrong. I mean, every different range of person, and just all the different fulfilling experiences they're having in their life right now. And then that's just really been the most fulfilling experience in my life. So it made me. Mm-hmm.
I just had a question. How did you, you talked about getting that diagnosis when you were 14. Is this something you felt throughout your entire childhood as well, or mostly teenage years?
As far as I can remember, I always had a very active mind. Yeah. And I think my earliest memory of anxiety type of thoughts might have been when I was like 5. I remember being in kindergarten and thinking like negative types of things. Mm. But I think that like when I was 14 is definitely, when I was a teenager is definitely when it started to peak, which happens for a lot of people. Yeah.
Right. And so I just have 2 questions before we get into now your specialty and what you're doing. And one of those is, I know, like when you talk about this feeling of anxiety, I resonate with it 100%. I've been there. I felt that. So I understand it. For maybe someone listening and they just hear anxiety, maybe explain the difference between having a hard day and you feel stress at work versus what you were feeling where you got to a mental state of suicide is my way out of this. Because I describe it as losing not just control of your thoughts and almost rational thinking, but you're starting to buy into lies that your mind tells you. And then your body almost starts to give in as well. And you feel like you're losing control of your body, the way you feel, your heart, your breathing. It's almost like you're losing control of it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, so is that what it was like for you at that point where you?
Yeah, I think that it's something that snowballs, right? Like at first it starts off with these thoughts that are abusive to you, where it makes you feel insecure, and it makes you feel like you're not good enough, and it makes you feel like you don't fit in, and it makes you feel all kinds of really terrible things about yourself that really mess with your self-confidence. And it makes you stay away from the world and from things because you're afraid of things. And the more that you do that, is the more your mind creates more stories because you're not in those situations. So it creates some other things. And then after doing that for a while, it just gets worse until the point where it becomes like, physical. And like, certain situations can spark certain things, but it's sort of like a feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're thinking, for instance, I have a fear of public speaking, and like right before I'm speaking, like even like days before, my stomach will hurt, and maybe like the day of, sometimes I'll have trouble sleeping the night before, the day of, like I'll get like, just like my heart will be racing. And then when I'm in it, I start sweating and like my heart is pounding and you just want to run away. And so that has been my experience with public speaking. But just like with any fear, and it's the same thing with anxiety, is the more you stay away from it is the more it's going to cause that for you. And so I remember the first time I ever gave a talk on anxiety, I opened saying, I'm anxious about talking to you guys about not being anxious. And, I just know that what I want to do in the world is so important to me that I'm going to be in a situation where I'm going to be talking to people about things. And I just knew that I was just going to have to find a way to get over that. I just became very determined to do that. And, like even when I'm talking to you now, sometimes thoughts come into my head that are like, that could cause nervousness. But the more that you don't give in to those thoughts, is the less that they begin to affect you physiologically. And the more you do the things that you really want to do but are afraid of, is the more that they seem less scary to you. And so the more, it decreases the like hold that fear has in you, and the like psychological and physiological experiences that you have from those situations.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like you were about in your 20s when you started making this transformation, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
What was it necessarily that you did? Because it sounds to me that you had odds stacked against you. You had all these professionals being like, "Hey, medication is your way. You're gonna feel a little better, but you're never gonna feel great." And
Yeah.
so, what changes did you make to get to where you are now?
I always have to be careful when I have this conversation because I am a like holistic anxiety specialist. I want to make sure that people understand that I'm not against medication, right?
Yep. Right.
I think that I love that medication is a tool that is available to people. The
Yeah.
issue that I have is that it's sometimes the only option that's being offered to people. And
Right.
for a lot of people, for 90% of people, it doesn't solve the problem, especially when it comes to anxiety. For a lot of people, like it was for me, medication acts as a sedative.
Mm.
And so it allows you to tolerate the problem, right? But I feel very passionately about like wanting people to not live a life that they're tolerating, where they're like they can bear to stand the misery that their mind is creating for them, because that's such a waste
Right.
of a life. Like I really want people to get to the root of what's causing the problem for them, and so that they can fix it and live this like really wonderful life that like doesn't have anxiety constantly riding them. And so for me, two things happened. One, I think I became very open to just trying things. And I became very clear that I wanted to change and that I would do what it took to change. And because that happened, the universe aligned. And when things came into my life, I was more open to it. Like I talk in my book, the very next day after like that night where I felt like I wanted to kill myself and I became determined to change, I walked into this like juice bar, and this homeless Rasta man came up to me and he was like, "You seem anxious. Do you want to do a meditation?" Or this nomadic Rasta man. And I was like there in my business suit, like on my way to work, and I was like, usually I would have been like, no, like who the hell are you? Like, no, I don't want to do some like boho meditation with some hippie pot smoking Rasta man who like is nomadic / homeless. But because I was so desperate, I was like, sure, whatever, man. Like, okay. And that really like sparked a journey for me. And he became my spiritual guide. And today he's one of my very best friends. And he really helped guide me along that way. And I think like also medication was an important part of my particular journey. I'm not saying that that's something that people need to do, and I'm not saying that people need to come off medication like I did. I'm just telling you my story in a way that just hopefully empowers people to make whatever decisions feel right to them without judgment from what people are telling you should or shouldn't do, or what's embarrassing or what's not embarrassing. And just to speak to medication, I remember I didn't want to go on it because I was very afraid of a lot of things. I was afraid that it would be addictive. I was afraid of the side effects. I was afraid that I just felt like it was taking away my freedom. I wanted to be able to be me, just being me. And I said that to my doctor, and he said that like it's sort of like you're driving a really fast car. And you're learning how to drive. It's difficult to learn how to drive a fast car. Like when it's difficult to learn how to drive when you're driving when the car is going really fast. First, you have to slow down the car, and then you can learn to drive. And then the car can go really fast, and that's okay because you know how to drive. And so that was my experience with medication. And that was because I found a really good doctor who understood what my personal goals were. And so that's what I really hope for other people as well.
Yeah.
So those are some things, yeah.
When I love that approach too, and that's what I feel I say like to a lot of people is you shouldn't feel ashamed if medication is your route to get to where you need to be, because there's plenty of people that it works great for. The thing for me is when I was on medication, I never had a doctor one time ask me about anything else. That never asked me about my diet, never asked me about exercise, never asked me about meditation. And so for me, I felt that was the only option, and it was the same for you. I had moments where it helped me, but I never really supplemented it with anything else that was healthy to go along with that as well. So I love your approach, and I feel that that's such a great approach to have for people too, is that there's no judgment in their approach to being healthy. that's the number one thing. Yeah. So I want, maybe before we get into what you're doing now in your holistic practice, maybe just tell people, I love the title of your book, first off. Maybe tell people, like, I'm sure that's available anywhere, the usual platforms and stuff, but what will they find in that book?
Yeah, so the book is called What the Hell Am I Supposed to Do with My Life? And it's a fun and friendly guide to finding your magic, your purpose, and yourself. And you can get it on Amazon. Just Google the title, or Krystal Chong, Krystalchong. My little dog was demanding to be a part of. And it's really that book is really about getting connected to something that's meaningful to you and finding a sense of meaning and purpose in life. Because if you're just doing what people told you to do, which a lot of us do because this is what society says will make you happy, chasing just like money, success, and recognition, you get to a point where you feel really empty, and that can really exacerbate issues with anxiety and depression. So my first book is really about connecting to something that's purposeful to you, that really heals a lot of your issues with anxiety and depression. And then there's a lot of other tools that helped me, really bring that way down. But the book that I'm writing now, which will be out next year, is called Anxiety Schmanxiety. And that's more specific for like natural and empowering solutions for anxiety.
Awesome.
And then, and it's also like that material is also in the course, which will be out in September.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw a post that you did, I can't remember when it was, but you mentioned even now having those moments where you can feel, whether it's anxiety or you can feel those thoughts creeping back in. And I think your post was talking about some type of steroid or something you were using or something like that. But you kind of had to recheck in with yourself and be like, why am I feeling this again? And I feel like that's important to talk about, because people have, where maybe they're making this progress and then they have those days again and they're like, oh great, it's never going to get better. But I love how you were so open with it. And you're like, it came back, you checked in with yourself, you found the problem, and then you kind of just moved on,
Yeah. So I think that's the thing. I think some people think that, like, to get rid of anxiety, it's like a light that you turn off. It's like, it's not the same as, for instance, like with alcoholics, like there's like a definitive, I have not had a drink. I think that, like, it's just about a gradual progression of every day being better than the day before. And I think a part of that is understanding that you're going to take 3 steps forward and 1 step back sometimes, and that's okay. And the way that you really make progress is to recognize that that's just part of progress, and then just continue on taking the next 3 steps forward and focusing on what you learned from that step back or that regression, which is a part of the growth that you need to have and the way to understand yourself. And so the post that you're talking about was, I had a really bad sinus infection that got very extreme, and they had to give me some steroids. And it didn't occur to me that, like, steroids really mess with your hormones. And I just remember I was like really bugging out. And I was like, what is happening here? Like, I remember, I was like, this is how I used to feel. Like, my shoulders were tense, and I just could not stop thinking about crap that was making me miserable. And I was just like, what has happened? Because, like, I think when you make a lot of progress, you get to a point where you start to feel really good in your life and in your mind. And you get longer periods where you just feel really peaceful with yourself. So when it comes back, it becomes like a blaring signal, like something is strange here. But before you get there, that's just life. You know what I mean? Life is just constantly like that. So it became very clear to me that something was crazy, something was unusual going on. And I realized it was the steroids I took. And, 2 things really helped. One was the awareness of the fact that something external was causing this. This wasn't, the thought I was having wasn't true. Like, the misery I was feeling wasn't me. It was an external stimulus that was affecting my hormones, that was making me feel like this, and that would pass, So that was one thing. And then the other thing, which is really what I wanted to share in that post, was the way that gratitude works with your brain. Because I was feeling really miserable, and I was like, I hate this. And my husband was like, well, can you self-help yourself since you're a self-help author? I was like, that's a good idea. And I was like, what do I tell people to do? And I have like an anti-anxiety emergency toolkit. And one of the things that I've just found really powerful is this concept of gratitude, which can sound simplistic. But if you understand like scientifically how it works, it really helps. And so like what happens is when you have anxious thoughts, it creates adrenaline and it creates hormones that feel good to your body, right? So it becomes addictive. Your body like likes to do it because it's incentivized to have these thoughts. When you think, I want to stop having anxious thoughts, the part of your brain that's involved with regulating your thoughts doesn't produce any feel-good hormones or feel-good chemicals in your body. So you're essentially biologically incentivized to think anxious thoughts. But there's only one part of your brain that produces more feel-good hormones than the part of your brain that's activated by anxious thoughts, and that's thoughts of gratitude. So I literally just sat there and I started thinking about all the things I was grateful for, and immediately I just felt myself completely change. I felt like I could just feel my body chemistry changing, and everything just really changed after that because I just did that for a couple of days, and then once the steroids were gone, I was like, this is such a beautiful practice that every night now when I'm going to bed, my husband and I just talk about 2 things that we're grateful for,
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So let's jump right into your program then. I mean, you've already given some great tips of gratitude and balancing out these things, meditation and being kind of centered at where you're at. Let's talk about your program that you developed as a holistic anxiety specialist. Maybe you could tell us what all that entails in this program that you're currently developing and yeah, what that looks like.
Okay, so just to backtrack in terms of like closing off my story and how I got here. I essentially, after I wrote my book, I had brought my anxiety way down, but it still was a little bit tiring to constantly manage my mind. And I really wanted to find a way to live in a state of just calm and clarity and confidence and just peacefulness without so much effort all the time. And so for 3 years, I just really dove super deep into the research and, scientific research, ancient traditions, things that happen in other cultures, experimenting with different programs. And I really found a lot of natural techniques that have allowed me to essentially be off medication for over 8 years and live in a state of nearly zero anxiety on a daily basis. Like when something unusual is going on, maybe a 3, but that's huge, especially considering the fact that doctors told me that wasn't possible.
Especially when they said a 3 is the best you can hope for.
No, 7 was the best I could hope for.
I thought you said I had that backwards. I thought you said that you could maybe get it down to a 3. Wow, that's terrible.
Exactly. And
Sorry.
No worries. And I just became very passionate about wanting to share this with people because I was just like, this is what, when you go to the doctor because you have anxiety, this is what they should be telling people because these are actually solving the problems. So I created a program. I'm writing a book, but I also created a program because it involves a lot of lifestyle changes. And I think that to make lifestyle changes, people need a community and they need support and they just need something that's easier to implement. So the way that it works is it's 8 weeks. And every week you get a new perspective shift on something that could be causing your anxiety and homework to implement that week. And it covers 5 major things that cause anxiety. One is hormones. One is lifestyle. Another one is meaningful work, because if you're doing something in your life that you don't feel connected to, you're going to feel anxiety. Another one is intuition, because anxiety is an evolutionary useful tool. It can tell you when something is wrong. And then the 5th thing is mind management, which is my favorite because the technique that I use is something that after doing it for a while, it becomes effortless. And I really developed that because I had a problem with cognitive behavioral therapy because, cognitive behavioral therapy really just tells you to look at your thought and explain to yourself why it's not true. And if you have anxiety, as soon as you do that for one thought, another thought's going to come up and you're going to have to do that for that thought. So you're spending all your time and all your energy managing your thoughts, which is it's better than, sorry, my dog is causing drama.
It's all good.
Yeah, and what I really like about the technique is that it really allows you to use your mind for you instead of against you. And there's a lot of components of it that help with like manifesting really awesome things in your life. So it not just like helps you manifest, brings you more happiness and joy, but also like limits your anxiety.
Yeah.
And I mean, at some point, I really would like to share my perspective on anxiety with the people who are listening in, you know, because this is my mission in life, which is just to change the public narrative on mental illness from something that's defeating and depressing to one that's uplifting and empowering.
Right.
And so my perspective on anxiety and the anxiety from anxiety perspective that I share with you when you begin the course is that if you have issues with anxiety, you know, it's not because something is wrong with your brain or you're some like substandard human being, or you're some like mentally ill person. It's because you have really, really awesome superhuman, superpower traits. You know, things like hyperintelligence. You know, you have a super, super amazing sense of drive. You're really empathic, empathetic. You can really feel things deeply and understand people in a very deep and profound way. You're very creative. You're extremely intuitive. And these are all really, really powerful things. And the thing is that if you don't manage your mind and your body in the way that it tends to be managed, then those things can manifest as a side effect of anxiety. And so essentially you are not your anxiety, like you are those super powerful, super awesome traits. And if you just manage your mind and your body in the way that it intends to, then you can step into that person that you're really here and meant to be. And by doing that, it will automatically release a lot of that anxiety. And so that's what the program is about. And that's what I'm trying to do in the world, because so many people are wasting their lives feeling like they're not worthy like other people, or something is wrong with them, or just, you know, staying away from life and just taking a pill and thinking that like this is the best that it can be. And that's horrible, because that's not true, you know?
No, and I agree with that 100%. And here's a question I get, or I hear a lot, is when I love that you said creating something meaningful in your life, you know, doing something that's meaningful in your life. And the question I get is, what is these people that are stuck in a job that they hate, but they just feel like they can't get out of it. They have to work in this job. And so or I've even heard a spouse that stays at home and they have a hard time finding meaning in their day to day. It feels like the same thing over and over, like cleaning the house, doing laundry, doing this, and they have a hard time finding meaning in that. So for these types of people that approach you, maybe they have to keep that job. Maybe they, for now in their life, they have to keep that stay at home situation. So I'm curious on different things you tell these people. Is it finding, maybe supplementing that with a positive practice that brings meaning to you? Is it some type of serving, a way of getting outside of yourself? Or I don't know if that question makes sense, but
No, it does, totally. But the reason I'm smiling is because I think that anything you tell yourself will be true. So if you tell yourself, this is it, I have to do this, that's going to be true. If you tell yourself, I can find something else that I can be excited about doing, that will also be true. And it doesn't have to be, you know, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow, or I'm going to like leave my family. It's just a really powerful intention to focus instead on what you want instead of what you don't want. And when you do that, like, and you constantly move more towards what you want, like, it will work itself out. You will find that the universe will support you. And this is not me saying this alone. I talk about in my book. This is, you know, thousands of books have been written about this, like ancient books. This is something that happens with the universe. And there's like a scientific conversation behind it in terms of like quantum physics and how that works, which I'm not going to get into because that's a whole conversation. But, you know, like, if you're hesitant about it, what do you have to lose? Like, being hesitant about it is really just holding you back. Like, and aside from the spiritual aspect of it, really and truly the logical sense aspect of it is, wherever you focus your energy on, that's what you're going to get in your life. If you're focusing on what you're not happy with and what is not working, like, you're just going to experience more of that.
That's such good advice.
give yourself an opportunity to just try something new. You don't have anything to lose. Just focus on what you want, what gets you excited, and how can you start doing that. And I'm a huge supporter of baby steps. If that's what feels comfortable with you, just do whatever feels comfortable with you, and it will bloom and it will blossom and it will come into your life. And the more that you want it is, the more you will build it in your life, and just go with it. And it becomes a very beautiful journey that brings you so much happiness instead of thinking I hate my life.
I like that.
I have been there. I've gone through postpartum depression. I have gone through other things where I felt that way. And that's why I'm saying this, because that is what allowed me to come out of those situations.
Right. I appreciate that. I think that's such great advice. And it's funny. That's not, I mean, I expected a different answer and I thought yours was way better. So no, I love it. It's too easy to focus on what you don't have and all the bad things that are happening, and I love how you said what you think, that is your reality. Like that is the truth that you live with. So,
but also the more you think like that, the more you will think like that, right? Because it's a biological thing. When you have a thought that produces a negative emotion, like fear or anxiety, you're paving a neural pathway that becomes like a highway. So you will naturally think about everything in an anxious way. And the more you do that is the bigger the highway becomes. And the more you constantly think like that, right? And the more you're constantly thinking about what you're scared of and what you don't want, is the more your life is going to be unhappy. And so it's important to just stop that cycle and focus instead of what you do want and what you are excited about. And not only does that thought bring you immediate joy now, but it also paves that neural pathway for you to begin to think more like that, which then becomes a positive snowball of giving you more joy and bringing more of what you do want into your life.
Right. I love that. That's so great. Well, what I love about what you do is you obviously live what you teach. You're all about it, and it's so obvious. And the few times we've chatted, it's so apparent. So I appreciate that, and I've come to appreciate so much authenticity with people, and it couldn't be more obvious that what you're doing is authentic. And I love the place you come from. You have experience with it, and your thing is, if I help one person get out of the way I felt, then I've done my job. And you've obviously superseded that, which is amazing. So,
well, you know what, Kevin, I want to say this for other people who are scared to do something. When I first started, I was I really want to share what I found. I was the limiting beliefs come in. You're not a shrink. You can't, who are you to do something like this? That happens. And, from having conversations with people who have told me that, they've changed so much, and they've worked with shrinks, they've worked with therapists, they've just changed so much in a short period of time from just working with me. I what I've come to realize is from my perspective now, I think it's good that I'm not a shrink, because I really feel like shrinks don't get it. Shrinks, and I know from my personal experience, they tell you things that they've studied and that they've seen in clinical trials and that they've been taught to teach, but they don't understand what it feels like to go through the experience. They don't understand what it feels like to do the things that they're telling you. They don't understand why that doesn't work from a realistic perspective. And that's why I think it is important for people who understand the experience to share what has actually worked for a real person in real life,
Right. No, and I appreciate that. And I think it goes back to that you can't just stop at one resource, for you started down the medical route. They told you this, but you didn't accept that. And so for some people, therapy, shrink or counselors is their key, and it works fantastic. For other people, they go and they have a bad experience. And so I think the key is to just never give up. If something doesn't work for you, never give up there. Keep searching, because the resources are there. We've never had more resources than we do now. And that's what's amazing about people like you. You've been through it. You're providing more resources, and it's obviously helping people. So I'm pumped on that. I love what you're doing.
Okay. And I really don't intend for this to be a sales plug for anything I'm doing, but
you should. Here's your time, dude.
The reason that I'm doing it is because I have obsessed over this for 20 years. I've done so much research that I really felt a lot of people would never have the time or the bandwidth to do that. I've just put into one thing, that everything I've tried on myself.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel really passionate about the program, because I just feel I'm able to use my life's work to share, to help somebody else who was just and is just like me, to go from feeling what I cannot do this anymore, to like, I love the way I am because I'm able to do all this amazing stuff that like other people wouldn't necessarily be able to do because they're not me. I think everyone deserves to have that feeling.
I agree 100%. And so much of what you've talked about here is self-thinking, the way you think about yourself, the way you think of your situation, but your program even goes beyond that, right? I see a lot of posts about power foods, brain foods, all these things. I mean, and that's what I love is it's this whole body mind approach, and that's what needs to happen.
Well, like full 360 degrees. Like, I mean, I'm glad that you're doing a better job of selling my program than me. But like there's it's like a real holistic approach to things. There's an anti-anxiety diet because different foods that you're eating like affect your anxiety tremendously, and different foods that you're eating will help to reduce it. And these are things that people should learn in like grade school. Yep. You know what I mean? And like, you know, like there's also some other basic things that I really feel shocked that we're not aware of because it's our right to know, but like things like just, you know, the concept that anxiety is a disease of modernization. It's been classified like by the World Health Organization as a disease of modernization, which means that, you know, it's been increasing tremendously, and people ask why, and that's a reason, because we're living today in a way that we were never evolutionarily like designed to live. So our bodies are having a hard time processing that. Right. And it's not to say that I don't love the way that we live. I'm able to have a conversation with you that can reach a lot of people. I love it, but it's important for us to understand why that is affecting us on a chemical level and how we can, you know, do things that can prevent that from affecting us negatively, you know?
I agree. Krystal, what else do you want to say before we end? Is there anything you want to mention to listeners or audience? Or
well, I mean, I think that like if you feel that you want to find more happiness, if you feel that you want to find a way to use your mind for you instead of against you, if you feel like you want your mind to be a beautiful place that brings you joy, like that is there for you, 100%. And whether it's with me or with somebody else, I want you to look for it because it's there to be found. And there's so much beauty in life for you to experience through that search and through finding that. And I do have some free tools that I want to share with people if you know, they would like to just learn more about this. One is the anti-anxiety diet, which talks about the foods that cause anxiety, the foods that help limit it, and some meal plans for food that, you know, satisfies a sweet tooth, because I have a sweet tooth, but really limit your anxiety. And I'll send you the links so you can link them in the podcast.
That'd be great.
Below. And then I also have a series of meditations for people who hate to meditate for the same reason we spoke about earlier. And so I'll also link that, and then also the anti-anxiety emergency toolkit. And
that's great.
Yeah, if you are interested in doing the course, then we'll also put that below for you to get more information about that there. But if you just want tips, like on an ongoing basis for different things you can do for less anxiety and more happiness, then just follow me on Instagram and send me a message telling me that you found me through Kevin so I can say hi. And my Instagram handle is Krystal Chong, KrystalChong.
Perfect. And we will definitely link to all this in the description and everything, but I'm glad you put that out there for people that are just listening. Definitely check Krystal out on Instagram, and I love what you're doing. I'm stoked about it. So,
okay. And I love what you're doing so much, Kevin.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there any last thing? I mean, I feel like you covered so many great things, and I'm excited for more people to get access to this. And I just really appreciate your time and what you're doing.
No, I just want to send love to everybody and just say I'm excited for your journey, because I think that you've already started it by being here and listening to this podcast. You know, like you're already searching for the answers and they're coming to you, and I'm excited for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Krystal, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right, Kevin. Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.